some of you might know, we have our lovely friend Brittany here to speak to us. She was a UW Scout student, like some of us were, for however many years, and then she was also a student leader of street level. And then eventually God led her to the Philippines for 7 years, and now she's back into America. She was there as a missionary, and then she's going to tell us a little bit tonight about her story and all this stuff. So, yeah, I'm going to give it over to Brittany.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you guys here tonight. My name is Brittany Menor, like Daphne said, and I'm just going to share a little bit of my story tonight and what God has done through my life, everywhere, like from being a Scout student all the way up until today. So just a little bit of history for you guys. Actually, this Friday I think is the 13th, right? Yeah, marks 10 years since I graduated from UW Scout, which is really weird. It feels like it's been a year, not 10 years. So 10 years ago, I was sitting in your spot. I was just a college student. I came to Scout to study graphic design. I think I actually came because I got to play tennis. Like, that was the thing that sealed the deal for me. And then eventually I ended up quitting that and it didn't matter anymore. So, but yeah, I came to study graphic design. I had this idea in my mind for my life that I would just, pursue the American dream, that I would get my degree, I would maybe find a husband, we'd get married, live happily ever after, and then I'd retire. Like, literally my goal for life was retirement, because I thought, well, that's when you get to start having fun and you get to just do whatever you want. And so I was pursuing that, and about halfway into my time at Scout, my sophomore year, my long-term boyfriend and I broke up, and my world kind of shattered, and that was when God really started to work in my heart. When I felt most unlovable, He showed me that He loved me, and so then I started reading my Bible more, and that spring, it was spring of 2012, I prayed for Christian friends because I was lonely and broken, and even my mom, I remember calling her and asking her to pray for Christian friends for me. And that was the year that God kept putting people in my path. Like, at least 4 different people invited me to street level. And I kept giving excuses. I was like, no, there's a Packer game tonight, I don't want to go. Really lame excuses. And eventually, though, somehow God got me. I remember I was living just 3 houses away from this Coffeehouse, my first apartment, going into my junior year at Scout. It was 3 houses away. The year prior, I had signed a lease. I had no idea who Street Level was. I didn't know who the Blind Munchies Coffeehouse was. I had no idea. And so God must have been laughing, because He must have known that I needed to find a church where I didn't have to like drive to go to it or something. I don't know, just like, wow, Brittany, it's literally like 3 steps away. So I started coming to street level. My roommate at the time, not a Christian, she dropped me off. And she was like, bye, have fun. And I was terrified. I was so scared to go to street level alone. I was scared to do anything alone. And but then I found this community of people that like welcomed me in and wanted to know who I was. And then eventually people were inviting me to church. And that took me a little while. I remember going to an event on campus. It was called the Yeshua Palooza, so it was a big music festival, and I remember Pastor Tim being there, and he's got this beard, and he pulled up on a motorcycle, and he's got piercings, and I grew up in a Baptist church, and so I was like, no, he is not a pastor. And I was so scared to go to church. And I remember one of my friends from high school, I was telling her all this stuff, and she was a Christian, and she was like, oh, just go, Brittany, just go. And I was like, okay. So I showed up to church one Sunday, and I was, again, scared to go to church even. And but then met people that were like, hey, I'm so-and-so, what's your name? Is it your first time here? And it was the first time I had went to a church, because I had checked out a couple other churches in town. I checked out a couple other like campus organizations, and I could go in and out without anybody knowing I was there. Like I was just a face in a crowd. Like no one cared that I was there. And I was like, there's got to be something more to Christianity than that. So when I actually experienced that here, and I heard the Bible taught from, yes, Pastor Tim is indeed a pastor. When I heard him teach the Bible, I was like, this is what I've been looking for, and this is what I've been praying for. And so that was the fall of my junior year. I went to a retreat that Street Level was hosting, and the whole topic was, it was based on a book by someone. It's called The Explicit Gospel. So it was like the first time I heard the gospel in a way that clicked for me. Like I had grown up in church, but I just thought Christianity was being about being a good person, being moral and religious. So like I knew what I was saved from, but I didn't know what I was saved for until that weekend. It started to make sense. Like, oh, Jesus died to save us for a mission and a purpose, and it's lived out in the context of community with other people. Like he's got this great big global purpose that he's inviting us to be a part of. And so that was really pivotal for me. That was when I started to really step outside of my comfort zone. Like I said, I was scared to do anything alone. I was pretty shy, but I just kept showing up. I just kept coming to Street Level on Mondays, kept coming to church on Sundays, and eventually on Wednesdays too. And I started serving in the Blind Munchies Coffeehouse. Like I got to serve on Sunday mornings, and I joined the School of Believers class in Believers Church. So it's like a basic Bible doctrine class. Started learning a lot about the Bible and what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. And just started making little steps to commit like my life to God. And it was like everything was falling into place. Like, okay, these are these people that are loving Jesus and they're helping me love Jesus more. So I should be spending more time with them because I want to love Jesus more. And this is how it's being played out. So I was, like I said, I was a junior, and just really discovering what it means to be a disciple and live that out. Like my faith started becoming real. It wasn't just something in my head anymore, but it was actually being lived out in my like classwork. I started doing some of my art projects like based on scripture. My screen printing class, I was doing prints based on stories I read in the Bible. My coding classes, when I was up at 2 a.m. and not able to figure out like the code to make a website work, I would pray and ask God to help me, and then like within a minute he'd show me, you need a period here, not a comma. And so like it just started, yeah, Arthur's totally connecting with this right now. It just started making sense, like, oh, Jesus wants everything. He wants everything. Like he wants to be a part of every aspect of my life. And so in 2014, that was a really pivotal year for me. I had moved into the Street Level house and was entering into my final semester of college. So for you art and design students, senior show time, which is always frightening and exciting all at the same time. And I think that was the year when I really actually surrendered my life to Jesus. When I remember thinking, I think I was over by the subway here in town. I remember thinking, well, if I can trust Jesus with my eternity, why can't I trust him with my daily life? And like for a while, I was still trying to hold on to like a lot of control of my life, like how I thought my Christianity should be played out. And that was just a time where I was really brought to a surrender of, okay, Lord, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm entering into my final semester of college. I don't know what you want for my life, but I want whatever you want. And so that August, I had signed up to go to the Philippines on my first mission trip. So the next spring, I saw what God was doing in the Philippines. Like I had seen other people go. I had heard the stories. I'd seen the pictures. I just wanted to be a part of what God was doing, not just here in Menomonie, not just here at Stout, but also like a part of what God was doing through the church over in the Philippines. And so I signed up, and so that was like my last semester of college, and we would be going to the Philippines the next spring. And I remember telling my parents, yeah, I signed up to go to the Philippines on this mission trip. And they were like, what? They were like, how are you going to afford that? How are you going to find a job after you graduate? A job that's going to let you leave for 3 weeks, just a couple months after you start working there. And I was like, I don't know, but I know I'm supposed to go. And where God guides, God provides. I had been taught that through street level and through the church, that where God guides you, he provides. And it may seem impossible, but our God is the God of the impossible. He can do anything. And I'd already seen him do a lot of that through my life and through street level. And so I graduated in December, like I said, 10 years ago this Friday, and I didn't have a job. So for those of you who are graduating soon, I know Stout's big on the 99% employment rate, or graduated and got a job within 6 months of graduation. And I can brag on them because I work for that department that promotes the 99% employment rate. For those of you that don't know, I work at Stout now, which is kind of ironic. But yeah, I had graduated without a job, and I remember applying to jobs, and eventually I found one at in Chippewa, and I went to an interview, and I did the whole interview stuff. And in the interview, I told the woman that was interviewing me that, yeah, I'm planning to go on this mission trip in the spring, and I'll be gone for 3 weeks. And basically, if you don't like that, well, I won't take the job. And later on that day, I had gotten home from the interview, and later on that night, I got a phone call asking if I wanted to work there. And it's like, yeah, sure, that sounds great. This job was totally fine with letting me leave for 3 weeks. So God, again, where God guides, God provides. And so the next few months, I started preparing for my first trip to the Philippines. Some of the people in this room were with me on that trip, which is kind of cool. We got to experience some really crazy stuff. Just in preparation for this tonight, I was reading through some of my notes from that trip, and just the things leading up to it. It was a year of preparation and training, of learning the culture. We tried to learn some language stuff. I remember doing flashcards with some team members, and I don't think we were pronouncing things even remotely close to correct, but we were doing our best. Cebuano within a Midwest accent, it's something else. So we were just doing what we could to prepare, and praying and training. We were going to be hosting a youth camp on the top of a mountain in the Philippines, and it just, I don't know, it sounded exciting, and I wanted to be a part of it, and I wanted to see what God was doing. And so the first trip, it was challenging. On that trip, we got to climb a mountain, and we didn't bring enough water. Ben is laughing because Ben was also on that trip. And so it just became it became a lot more than we expected, but we got to go to this teeny tiny church in the middle of a mountain in the middle of the Philippines. And I was like, where am I? I am very far away from home right now. And that was one of those, what we call thin places, where it's God is nearly tangible, because you're just in a place where you can't grasp onto anything except for the fact that God is there and with you. And then later that day, we went back down the mountain. So we hiked for 4 hours, I think, to get up the mountain. I think Jesse preached at this church, and then we hiked a couple hours back down, and then we drove through sugarcane fields, and then we went to a slum in the middle of this city where there were 50 kids packed into a tiny room, probably the size of the stage that I'm sitting on. And it was the hottest place I think I've ever felt in the entire world. And I think Nate and Ben were at the front of the room holding up a projector screen, and you could see the sweat dripping off of their elbows. Like, it was so hot. But God was there with us. And it's some of those things that like are etched into my memory that, man, I just think, what if I would have said no? What if I would have just, oh yeah, no one will hire me after graduation. I should just like focus on my job. I should focus on my career. What if I would have told God no? I never would have gotten to be in those places with those people doing what God created us for. And so I guess I started to learn like saying yes to God is really the way to go. Just keep saying yes to God. Whatever he puts in my way, say yes, because his way is better. On that trip too, like, yeah, we had those high moments, but we also had low moments. I remember I got sick. Like, I used to get pretty car sick. So we had to find like the strategic spot in the back of the vehicle, like winding down the mountain, and us car sick people would tend to fight for the back seat so we could have the best spot, so we would get the least amount of car sickness. I got heat sick. Like, the heat of the Philippines just, it knocked me out for like a day, and that's not good when you're with a team of people and you're trying to like keep going and keep serving together. One thing affects everybody. So that was hard. It was really hard, and I felt super out of place. Like, you walk down the street and everybody's staring at you because you're white, and they're like, what are you doing here? And also, if you're with like 15 other people, you look like a parade walking down the street in the Philippines, which is odd because they're so used to parades. They have parades all the time. So I don't understand why we stand out so much when we're there. But so as hard as it was, I also loved it. Maybe I'm just a glutton for pain, I don't know, but I loved the challenge of it. I loved how God brought me to spaces and like thoughts in my mind where I had to like choose whether I was gonna follow Jesus or follow myself, basically. Like, am I gonna live selfishly or am I gonna live for him? And so there were just a lot of things. Like, when you go on mission trips, you go expecting to help or serve the people that you're going to serve and like make a difference in their lives, but really a lot of the difference is God making in your life. Like, you come back changed. You come back from the mission field different. And if you've been on like any of the street level trips down south, I know Street Level's planning another one during spring break this year. Those trips, you come back different. Like, spending time with people in the mission field outside of your normal zone, it changes you. So a month or so after I got back from my first trip to the Philippines, this was 2015, it was just a 3-week trip. I didn't know what would come of that. But a month later, I just really felt God tugging at my heart, and just the way my life was going, to join the School of Ministry, which is a 3-year intensive training program through Believers City Church. And it's basically a training program to equip you to lead and to minister to a higher capacity. And it will make or break you. So again, maybe I'm just a glutton for pain, because it really will. It will, the middle of your life will disappear. You don't get to you don't get to just waste your time or waste your life. You really get a deeper clarity and focus of what God has created you for. And so I started that in August of 2015. And then I got to tell my boss, so I was still working for the same company, right? Like, I got back from my first trip to the Philippines. She was probably like, oh good, Brittany's back for good. And then a month or two later, I got to tell her, hey, I'm going back to the Philippines next year. Okay. yeah, this time it'll be for 2 or 3 months. Because part of the School of Ministry training program is to go on long-term mission. So I remember talking to her about that, and she was like, she took a big deep breath and she was like, well, I guess we gotta find an intern. So she didn't like say, okay, you're done, you're out of here. She wanted to keep me there as an employee, so she was willing to bend. And we actually came to Stout's career conference to try to like recruit a graphic design intern from Stout. I think we ended up getting someone from Eau Claire, which is kind of a bummer, but because my boss also went to Stout, so we were just Stouties by heart. But yeah, it was cool to see that like. As I walked in obedience to God, like he worked those details out. Like I could have tried to, I don't know, control things or, I don't know. It's just, I think sometimes, especially at Stout, you know, the Polytechnic University of Wisconsin and 99% employment rate, we put so much into our careers, and it's just like the aura of Stout's campus, and it's really not that big of a deal, to put it frankly. Like, God can do anything, and whether you get a degree or not, he can use you. So yeah, my boss was like, okay, we'll find an intern. So I went back to the Philippines the next year. This was summer of 2016, for 2 months. Jess and I went. We were both ministry students at that time. Jess is married to Jonah. He leads street level over in River Falls. So if you know Jess and Jonah over there. We got to do our trip together, which was a blast. Yeah, 2 months living on the top of a mountain in the middle of a third world country. It'll do something to you. But during that time, we started, like one of the things we were trying to do while we were there was a Bible study, like with college age students. So at the time, the ministry that was happening up there was more focused on children, and we were moving more into the city, working with college students, because street level is our focus. Like street level is the lifeblood of what we do around here, of how we reach people for Jesus. And so it was just naturally moving into college students and young professionals. So we were praying and like trying to figure out what that would look like. And then while we were in the Philippines, we were hosting a youth camp, and we met one of the Filipino counselors. So we would have a Filipino paired with an American, and then we would lead small group discussions at this youth camp. So the Filipino would help translate and communicate with the youth at the youth camp. And one of those Filipino translators and camp counselors was like, yeah, we do a Bible study on Thursday nights at McDonald's in IT Park in the city. And I was like, hold up, what? You do what? Can we get in on that? Like, you're doing this already with young professionals and college students? Can we join you? Like, can we lead some of those studies? So that whole summer, those 2 months that we were there, every Thursday, Jess and I were going down the mountain. So it's like, it probably takes 2 or 3 hours to travel down this windy, curvy mountain to get into the city, and then maybe a little bit longer, like depending on traffic. It's crazy. Traffic in the Philippines is insane. So it was like a whole day ordeal to get down to the city, is what I'm trying to say. But every Thursday we did it so that we could go to that Bible study at McDonald's. And for context, in Cebu City, that's about, let's see, 964,169 people as of the 2020 census. So nearly 100,000 people, and that's one of the biggest cities in the Philippines. It's like the biggest city in that region, and on this island, Cebu Island, the island is only 20 miles wide at its widest point. So just imagine like so many people, 964,000 people in this city on this island that's like not even from here to Eau Claire. Like that's crazy. So it was a big city, and we learned how to get around. It was kind of scary at times, but we figured it out and we stuck together. And we just started building relationships with the people that God had put in our way. And that's really always what we did in ministry over there is like, okay, God, who do you want us to serve today? Who are you putting in our way today? And so let's see. Yeah, I guess that was like the focus of our trip there was meeting with those young people. And then we came back in July of 2016. And for the next 4 months, I felt like I didn't belong here anymore. Like there was just this weird, unsettled thing in my heart that was like, I would rather be in the Philippines. And I just didn't want to work a desk job anymore. I didn't want the American dream. You know, that plan of retirement that I had going into college, I didn't care anymore. Like I didn't want that. I wanted to be over in the Philippines. And although I don't know that I actually knew it was the Philippines at that time. I take that back. I just knew I didn't really feel like I was supposed to be here. So for 4 months, I just kept obeying though. I kept serving in the church and in street level. I kept working the job I was working at and just praying that like God would use me. And then one night, it was in September of 2016, I got sick and I had to stay home from street level. And that was when street level was meeting in the street level house, and I was living in the street level house. And for anyone who's lived in the street level house and gotten sick while street level meets there, it's super awkward, isn't it? Yeah, I'm seeing some nods. Because you're just like sequestered up in your room or down in your room. Well, you can hear all the action going on downstairs, like the meeting's going on, and you're just kind of like, oh man, I want to be there, but I'm sick. And so I was kind of like, I was bummed about that, of course. I loved being at street level. And anyway, I started listening to a Bible teaching. We were going to be having another street level retreat that fall. And I started listening to a Bible teaching to prep for that, to like lead the small group discussions. And in it, the guy who was talking was basically talking about how Jesus left the comfort of heaven to come to earth to save us. And I was like, for some reason, that was really profound for me that night. And I was like, I prayed, well, Lord, if you can leave the comfort of heaven to come to earth to save us, I'll leave the comfort of the United States and go wherever you would send me. And I prayed that. And maybe an hour or two later, I get a text message from Pastor Tim, and he's like, hey, can we meet for coffee tomorrow? And I was like, oh crap, what did I do? Like, I'm in trouble. What does he want? Why does he want to meet for coffee? And I was like, sure, okay. So we set a time, we set a place. We met. I like slipped out of work for a little bit, and I met him at a Starbucks in Eau Claire, and he had a flat white sitting on the table there for me. And he started with, so where's the School of Ministry taking you? Because it was like 2015. It was a year and a half in that I've been in the School of Ministry at that time. And I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, like, I love serving in street level, and like at that time I had kind of dreamed like, okay, maybe we could plant a branch of street level in Eau Claire, you know, UW Eau Claire or something. Because I worked in Chippewa, maybe that's close to Eau Claire. Maybe that's what God would be calling me to. I could help with that somehow. And then he was like, to the Philippines? And I was like, what? And he was like, here's the deal. We want to plant a branch of street level in Cebu City in the Philippines. And I was like, okay, that sounds awesome. And he was like, do you want to go? And I was like, what? Me? I'm not qualified. I literally said, I'm not qualified for that. And he was like, but you can disciple college girls, can't you? And I was like, yeah, I guess. And so that was the start of like going long term. I think God had already been working that in my heart, obviously. And at first I told him I'd have to pray about it or something, but it's really funny because I think I had already been praying about it the night before I prayed about it. Like, I don't know. And then there were a couple other things we had to work out. Like, I couldn't just go alone, of course. So for those of you that have met her, my friend Laura, she and I ended up like going together. She's a part of Believers Church too, but yeah. I think the next day I texted him and I was like, okay, burn the ships. I'm in. Like, basically burn the ships. I'm not going back. Like, that, like, the life that I was living, the life that I had, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm all in. Let's go. Let's do this. And he was like, I appreciate your tenacity, but we got to work some stuff out first. And so, like, talking to Laura, we had to talk to Laura and see if she wanted to go. And also it had to get like just approval through the church leadership. It wasn't just like we were going off Rambo to the Philippines. Like the church had to all be on board and all be on mission. And the leadership of the church had to determine, is it safe to send 2 single females to the Philippines? And so then they sent us to Krav Maga training to get us ready to go. So for those of you that don't know, Krav Maga is a form of Israeli self-defense, and it's really intense. And so for 4 Saturdays, Laura and I were going off to Stillwater to like these self-defense classes, and it was awesome. It was so much fun. So don't mess with me. If you sneak up behind me, I will definitely show you some moves. So about 3 weeks, yeah, we had to work on some details in the Philippines too. Basically, there was this university, it was called the University of the Southern Philippines Foundation, USPF. Filipinos love their acronyms, so forgive me if I use some acronyms that you don't understand, but they wanted us, like we had presented the radio station to them, and they wanted our radio station on campus. And so they were like, then we were like, well, if you want our radio station, you're getting street level. And so we had to work some of that out before we went over there, and it just wasn't moving anywhere. And then Jesse and Chelsea, who are our missionaries now, they're over in the Philippines right now, they were there before we got there. So it's kind of weird. It's like we keep passing the baton back and forth in a relay race. So I'm just waiting for them to pass the baton back. No, I'm just kidding. It's their time now. It's their time to pass the baton. So they were already there, and they were doing all this groundwork, and they were searching for a place for us to live. And like the university had said, oh yeah, you can live on our campus. And then that just ended up being like falling through. So there was a lot of details to work out, but within 4 weeks, the details got worked out. And so like, I think I met with Tim on September 21st, and by October 31st, my bags were packed and I was on an airplane. So I had quit my job, I had sold my car, I had gotten rid of most of my belongings and fit pretty much everything into 2 40-pound army duffels. And that was what we were going over with. And it was crazy. We got to fly on Halloween. I was super bummed though. We couldn't have picked a day later. I missed the most epic Harry Potter Halloween party ever. Sasha's over there. Props to Sasha. There was like a sorting hat and everything. But yeah, so we flew out on Halloween of 2016, and Tim and Sharon were already over there. They had gone over a couple weeks prior to help Jesse and Chelsea get things ready. Got to meet up with Jesse and Chelsea, got to get settled in. We went out and bought some mountain bikes, because that was going to be how Laura and I were going to get around this city of a million people, was bicycles, which sounded great, and sweaty, very sweaty. I learned how to okay, anytime I bike anywhere, bring an extra shirt, because you're going to be sweating through your other one. So the first 6 months of being over there was just a lot of learning how to survive. Like, it's just so different than here, you guys. Like, it's so different. Just go on YouTube and watch like vloggers videos of the Philippines. There's people everywhere. There's noise everywhere. There's like dogs everywhere and chickens that run out in front of you on the road, and people that carry giant pigs on motorcycles. Like, it's so unreal. And so a lot of like the first 6 months of us being there was not even we weren't even able to do much for street level. It was basic survival. How do you grocery shop? How do you pay bills? How do you get from A to B? How do you like, what parts of the city can you bike in safely and what parts can't you? And what parts are shortcuts so that you're not taking all day to get there? Like those kind of things was just a lot of what we did the first 6 months. We also had like a language teacher. She taught us a lot of the culture and some basics of the language so that we could communicate with people while we were there. And yeah, we basically, when we went over, we agreed to stay for like 6 months to a year. Like, I had no idea it would lead to 6.5 years of being over there when I said yes. But it was just this natural progression. Like the previous part of my life where like I kept saying yes to God, like, yes, I'm gonna show up to street level. Yes, I'm gonna go to church. Yes, I'm gonna show up for my Coffeehouse shift on a Sunday morning. Yes, I'm gonna join the School of Believers. Like it was all just like this natural thing. One thing led to the other. So like just a series of saying yes to God. And I guess that's how I ended up staying for 6.5 years, was I just kept saying yes to God. As hard as it got, as lonely as it got, as frustrating as it got. Like that university that kind of stringed us along saying we could have street level there, that fell through. So then we had to figure out, okay, well, we're here for street level. What do we do now? And we had still been doing that Bible study, like that one at McDonald's that I told you about. We still kept doing that because Jesse and Chelsea had done that for the 4 months like in between when I was there in July and then when I went back in October, November. Like they had continued that. So we kept doing it. But the ultimate goal was street level. And so we found this other university. I had met a student at a church that we had gone to, and she was from Nigeria, actually, which was ironic. She was from Nigeria, and she was studying medicine in Cebu, and she was like, we don't have a campus ministry, you should start one at our school. And so we met with like the powers that be there, and they strung us along. And then like later on, when it sounded like it was gonna happen, I met with one of the guys in charge there, and he was like, we already have a campus ministry, this guy does it, pointing at the guy who told us they don't have a campus ministry. So I'm like, someone's not doing their job. But it was fine. Like God's closed doors are always just his direction to like what he actually wants us to do. So then we concocted this plan. We got to have like a recruitment meeting. Like, let's make a special edition of Word on the Street magazine, because we had been publishing that there since 2014. That was being run by some Filipinos over there. So let's make a special edition. Right on the cover, we're gonna put street level ministries, recruitment meeting, pick a date, pick a place, pick a time, and then just blanket the city. Because in Cebu City, there's, I think, 13 universities and probably more than 20 smaller colleges and trade schools or like technical schools. So think about like 13 UW Stouts in a city. Like that's a lot of college students. A lot of the students from Cebu Island and even the surrounding smaller islands, they flock to Cebu City to get an education because education for them is a way out of poverty. So they see it as their ticket to a better life. So there's just this huge opportunity to be able to share Jesus with college students. And it is a really religious nation. It is the only Christian nation in Asia. They boast about that, but it's a heavily Catholic nation. So it's a lot of religious people that go to Mass on Sunday and live like it doesn't matter on Monday. So a lot of people who think they're Christians but don't know what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. They don't know what it means to actually be born again and filled with the Holy Spirit and live a life of obedience to him. So there's like this huge opportunity to meet with college students and be like, hey, do you want to study the Bible and learn what it means to follow Jesus? And a lot of them are actually open to it because like there is this culture of Christianity there, and then they start to realize what it actually means to follow Jesus. And it can be really hard for them to actually do that. There's this huge culture of like just family pressure. So they don't want to upset their family by leaving the Catholic faith to become a disciple of Jesus. Or there's this pressure from their family to put their studies first. So it's really similar to stuff we experience here. You know, parents want you to go to college and focus on that, and you can focus on that Jesus thing after you graduate. And as if you're a regular at street level, you know that's not what we teach here. It's like you focus on Jesus here and now. Gosh, it was only our second year, or first and a half year there. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just following God, and whatever he wanted, we were gonna do it. So over the course of 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because our recruitment meeting was Thursday night, we passed out 700 of the magazines. I just plotted out where on the map, what universities we would hit each day, and we'd just stand outside a university for an hour or two and pass out the allotted magazines at that university, and then we'd move on to the next one. Laura and I did that, and then a couple of the writers of Watts, the Filipino writers, they joined us and helped us with that, so that was really cool. And then, let's see, that Thursday night, we were getting ready for this big recruitment meeting. 700 magazines, who are we going to get tonight? We're going to get a lot of people, right? We were sitting there at the coffee shop. It was Bo's Coffee. It was just this coffee shop that we didn't know where to go. We didn't know what to do. We couldn't meet on a university because the universities there are all walled and blocked off, and you have to have an ID to get in. There's literally a security guard with a gun at the entrance of every university. So you can't just stroll onto campus like you can here at Stout. You have to have a reason to be there, or you have to have a student ID. So we had to meet off campus. And so we picked Bo's, we rented a room there, we got some coffee, we got some bakery, and no one was showing up. I'm like, what the heck? We passed out so many magazines. The only people that were there were some of the people from our Thursday night Bible study that we had been continuing, which was awesome. It was so cool to be able to have their support. But they weren't college students. They had already graduated. They were working and young professionals. So they were there to help us and assist us. And one of the girls, her name is Dyrene. She was the one who helped us connect with that Bible study in the city for the first time, that Filipino camp counselor that I mentioned earlier. She was there that night, and she also helped us pass out magazines throughout the week. And she was like, I'm just gonna go check outside and see if anybody's outside and see if they're waiting outside. And I was like, okay, whatever, no one's gonna be out there. I was so wrong. She went out there, probably just prompted by the Holy Spirit, and there were three fresh college girls. They had their magazine in their hands, and they were asking the security guard. They were like, Kuya means big brother. Kuya, do you know what this is? And the security guard had no idea what was going on. He had no idea we were meeting in there, and I'm like, oh, I guess we probably should have told him that, I guess. I don't know. We told the Coffeehouse staff, but not the security guard. And so Dyrene saw them with the magazine and saw them looking around confused and asking the security guard where to go or what was going on. And she went out and got them. And she was like, yes, it is happening here. It's here. Come, please come in. And so these three students from the University of the Visayas, they showed up, and I basically gave this spiel about street level, about what our mission was, what our goals were for the ministry, and I felt like I didn't know if I would ever see them ever again. The looks on their eyes, obviously they were overwhelmed, who's this white girl talking to us? What is this? I don't know about this kind of thing. And I asked them, I was like, do you guys want to do a Bible study next week? And they were like, sure. And so we set a place, guess where? McDonald's, because apparently that's where you do Bible studies in the Philippines, because I didn't know. So we met at a McDonald's near their university the next week, and we just started going through the Gospel of John together. All three of these girls were Catholic. They didn't know their Bibles, but they, for some reason, wanted to be a part of street level. And then we met at the McDonald's the following week, and I was like, we can't just keep meeting at McDonald's. We have to figure this out. Meanwhile, a week or two later, I was coming back to the United States for a visit for our annual. We would come back every 6 months or so, just so we would be able to continue having fellowship with the church and with Street Level. So I was slated to come back to America and then go back to the Philippines for a week and then go to India for 3 weeks, because that was another part of the training program for School of Ministry, was to go to India on a mission trip. So I was like, God, I'm never gonna see these girls again. I'm gonna be gone for like 6 weeks. They're not gonna wanna be a part of this. And again, I was wrong. I kept praying for them and kept in touch with them while I was in the States, kept in touch with them a little bit when I was in India, and we got back to the Philippines and they were still there. Wow, shocker. It's like God had picked them. And so I know I'm probably running out of time, but just to like summarize that, like that's the start of Street Level in the Philippines. It just started with 3 students and we just kept meeting regularly. God gave us a like semi-permanent space in Cebu, kind of in the center of a lot of the universities. It was just this like skinny little conference room at a hotel, on the ground level of a hotel that students would walk by constantly. And we just met and we studied the Bible and we talked about how it applied to our lives. And those 3 invited their classmates and then like just kept doing that and kept producing Watts. Like one of the girls started, that was at that first meeting, she started writing for Word on the Street magazine. She wrote for the magazine for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, pretty much all of her time in college. And it was basically just doing what we're doing here, learning what it means to be a disciple of Jesus and how to actually follow him in college. And I don't know, like I said, 6 months led to 6.5 years, and it was just simply like saying yes to God. And I guess, now Jesse and Chelsea are over there. If you've met Jesse and Chelsea, they are from Street Level up in Superior. So they went over there last July of 2023. Just the nature of things were shifting. Like it was their time to be there. Just like it was my time to be there in 2016, it was now their time to go over there. And they're continuing what was started. Like Street Level is bumping over there. It's so cool to see. There's a branch in Cebu City and then also a branch in Toledo City, which is on the opposite side of the island. And yes, it's only a 20-mile wide island, but it will take you 3 hours to get those 20 miles. So every week, Jesse and Chelsea, although they're on motorcycles, so it's a little faster, I got to ride the bus, which was terrifying my first time ever riding the bus, but Shiloh helped me get over that fear. I remember telling Shiloh, okay, caveat, for some reason, like I have these irrational fears sometimes. I was so scared to ride the bus for the first time in the Philippines. And maybe it's because I've heard so many horror stories and seen the buses in the Philippines that it's like some of them, I had a friend over there, also an American, his name is Jim. He's like this old retired guy. And he's like, yeah, those are suicide buses. So like there was just this stupid fear in me and like, oh, well, I don't know like how to get a ticket, or I don't know how to tell them where I need to go, or how to get off and all this stuff. And I remember like chatting with Shiloh on video chat like before campus church one night and telling her, yeah, I have to ride the bus to Toledo next week for Street Level. And she was like, oh, that sounds like so much fun. And I was like really kind of like irrationally crabby about how excited she was about that. But really thankful she said it, because otherwise I probably wouldn't have been, I don't know, I probably would have been scared to go on the bus. But anyway, I ended up loving the bus, and since then it's really not that scary. It's a lot of fun. So last year I came back to the United States. Jesse and Chelsea are over there now, and now I get to, I don't know, do this, like get people excited about like what God is doing in the Philippines. I've always loved being a bridge, I guess. I love connecting people with people. I love connecting people with jobs even. Like I'm always looking at jobs and be like, oh, this would be a great job for someone, or like just random stuff like that. And now I kind of feel like I get to help connect all of you to what God is doing in the Philippines just by telling you the story that He's written for my life, and hopefully maybe light a fire under some of you guys. Like, you guys sitting here, what if you're the next street level missionary to the Philippines? Have you ever thought about it? Have you ever considered like what that could look like for your life? Have you ever considered the choices that you're making now could lead to that? I don't know if I fully did at that time. I just knew that I needed to keep saying yes to God. And I guess I'm just here to tell you that keep saying yes to God. Jesus said in John 10:10, "The thief comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy, but I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." And that's one of my favorite verses. And it's also one of Jesse's favorite verses. So if it's one of your favorite verses, you might be next. But really, the more you give God, the more He's going to give back to you. Please, if you hear one thing from tonight, please do not just go with what culture tells you to do. Don't waste your life on meaningless things. Don't waste your life doing what the world is telling you to do. Do what God is telling you to do. And if that makes your parents angry, well, that's going to make your parents angry, and they'll get over it eventually. Mine did. If that means quitting your job, hey, the retirement plan in heaven is better, okay? And it also means whatever you give up now, God's going to give you 100-fold. I'm not special. I'm just a normal girl from Wisconsin who studied graphic design at Stout. And look at what God can do with that. None of us are special, but He picks us. He's chosen each of you. Each of you has a calling. And maybe you are meant to stay in Menomonie. Maybe you are meant to be faithful here. Or maybe you're meant to go to Minneapolis. Maybe you're meant to go to Europe. Maybe you're meant to go to Africa. I don't know, but figure it out. Find out what that is for you. Whatever God has created you for, and do it well. We all have a part to play in God's story, and the worst thing you can do is disobey Him. Disobedience is draining. That will sap you of all of the energy and the excitement that you think you will get from doing that thing. Ultimately, obedience is what leads to that abundant life that Jesus promises us. So be open to God's interruptions in your life. Take note of those little things. I could go on and on and on about a lot of the weird coincidental things that God did in my life to lead me and to shape me and to mold me, but that would take forever, and we don't have time for that. But you take note of those things in your life, because God's a personal God. He wants to have a relationship with you, and He's wired you for a purpose and a reason, and He wants you to know what that is. He's not hiding it from you. And so wherever you are, be all there. That's your mission field. Before I went to the mission field in the Philippines, I was a missionary here. I saw my classwork as a mission field. I saw my work as a mission field, the coworkers I was working with, my neighbors. Missions doesn't start when you go abroad. It starts here before you're sent out. And don't give in to the American dream, really. I think this generation, I think culture now is maybe a little bit less set on the American dream. Maybe the generations before us were a little bit more focused on that. I think there is a lot of tenacity in this generation, but also a lot of fear. So don't let fear hold you back from doing what God has called you to do. So my key takeaways for you guys tonight, just 4 things. Start now. Don't wait until after you graduate to start following Jesus and to start making hard decisions. Start now. Number 2, lock arms with the people beside you. I wouldn't have ever ended up in the Philippines if it weren't for the people beside me in street level and in Believers Church. I learned from them. I got to serve with them. They're a part of this story too. And they helped confirm that call on my life. So lock arms with the people beside you. Number 3, keep saying yes to God. And if you say no, He's gracious. Just don't wait too long to turn around and say yes. And number 4, don't stop till you're dead. I might be back in the States, but I think most of my close friends know that like I would hide as a stowaway on someone's luggage to get back to the Philippines. But really, if I never get back to the Philippines, that's okay. God gave me the time that I got there, and now I get to serve him here. Like, I get to be here telling you this story. I get to work at Stout, which is crazy. I thought, oh, it'd be cool to like work at a university someday. Like, I'd love to be a professor. I considered grad school. I considered becoming a design professor. But now I do get to work at Stout, just not as a professor, and I'm really glad I'm not a professor. I get to work at Stout. I get to like live here on mission now, and I get to take those experiences that God gave me and like apply that now. So I'm not planning on stopping until I'm dead, and really my goal now is not retirement anymore. It's my goal is Jesus. Whether I have tonight, maybe, I don't know. I've heard of pastors preaching messages and then just keeling over and dying, so maybe I'll die tonight, maybe it'll be 20 years from now, I don't know. But honestly, I can tell you that Jesus keeps his promises, and when you put him first in your life, you will experience that abundant life that he promises. So that's all I really have. I'm sorry if that was confusing or a rambling diatribe at any point. Does anyone have any questions about that crazy story I just told you? Oh, yeah, Janie.
Were you able to use any of your design background while you were in the Philippines?
Oh, I love that question. Janie asked if I was able to use any of my design background while I was in the Philippines. Yeah, I did. I used it a lot. I got to help publish Word on the Street magazine. I got to design posters for street level to like hang up around the city to invite students to our Bible studies. I got to help design like the websites. I got to help like publish materials for other aspects of the ministry that was going on there. Yeah, I definitely used it in so many ways. Mm-hmm. Brady.
How are you able to balance out your ministry time with recharging? Because it's hard to pour into people's lives when your glass is, half full or close to empty.
Yeah. So Brady asked how I was able to balance my ministry time with recharging. So being able to like constantly stay filled with Jesus, to be able to overflow to Jesus. I did get a day off. Like, that is something that I was really thankful for. Mondays was my day off, and that was a time where I got to listen to the Sunday service. So, right now in the Philippines, they're just waking up to their Tuesday morning, 14 hours difference right now. So your Sunday morning would be middle of the night, Sunday night in the Philippines. So Mondays, I would have the day off, and I would get to catch up on the Sunday sermon from Believers Church. I would be able to just like spend time reading, doing hobbies. One of my favorite things to do just to recharge, because it's not just about like quiet meditation in your closet all day. It's also just like spending time with Jesus. One of my favorite things to do was just like go on my bike and just bike as far as I could go and see what I could find. That was really refreshing for me. A good stress reliever, just to hop on my bike. Because come on, when you hop on a bike, don't you feel like a 10-year-old again? Like you could just fly. So that was one way I got refreshed and recharged. Also just like being able to connect with people here. Like I would video chat with people here every so often, or like video chat before campus church on Wednesdays, and just staying connected with people here helped a lot too. And knowing like what was going on here, not feeling so separated from everything. Arthur.
Which subway? You said you have that.
I had my grand revelation.
There's like 4 subways.
Yeah, it was the subway next to Fortune Cookie, right? The Chinese restaurant by North Campus. Yeah, I was at that stoplight, like at the stoplight, and I was just thinking, well, if I can trust Jesus with eternity, I can trust him with every day. So yeah, I was near the subway at North Campus. Great question. Sasha.
How did you handle COVID?
Oh, how did I handle COVID? Yeah, that was wild. That was hard. COVID in the Philippines, I don't know if you know, but the Philippines had the longest and the strictest lockdowns in the entire world. We couldn't leave our house without having a pass to go to the grocery store. Like, there were checkpoints in the city with, you know, those security guards with the guns? There were army people with bigger guns at these checkpoints that would like check to see if you had a pass to be out of your house, and only one representative from your house could leave at a time. And so it was like super scary. Well, I don't know. I guess I don't know that I was ever that scared. I was just more like, okay, what the heck do we do now? Like, how do we handle this? Yeah, we were just locked down for a long time. I think there were like 3 weeks where I didn't really leave at all, maybe once to go to the grocery store, and like our road was barricaded off. So that was like at the start of COVID. But we stayed in touch with our leadership here in the States, and we asked a lot of help from them, and like, okay, how do we handle this situation? And a lot of times it was like, well, you're on the ground there. You know the rules. You know what you need to do or what you can and can't do. So a lot of it, Laura and I just had to figure out and work through. That was crazy. It was really frustrating because like street level was really starting to like get going at that time. Like we were starting to feel like a community, like we were hanging out more. And that took a long time to get to that point where we were just like buds, and we would hang out on Saturday nights and watch movies in the office and that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden it all went away. And so I did my best to make sure that we could still stay connected as a group. Like our street level meetings, we still, we met virtually to the best of our ability. The internet in the Philippines is not very stable, and a lot of our members were out in the rural areas where there is like no internet. So we did the best we could, just kind of held the course, and ultimately like we could have left. The church asked us multiple times, like, do you want to come back? And again, I'm a glutton for pain and discomfort. I said no. I was like, no, I believe we're supposed to be here. I believe there's still work for us to do here. And eventually it was through that, I think a year in, so I think it was February of 2021, we started branching out more to the rural areas because they weren't as strict on their restrictions. So we're like, well, if we can get out of the city, we can still minister. So that's when we started reaching out to Toledo on the other side of the island, and that is when Street Level Toledo was birthed. So that was pretty cool that came out of COVID. John?
So, from my understanding on the timeline, from 2012 to 2016 was from the time you started coming to the Believers Church to the time you basically left to go to the Philippines long term, yes?
Yes, from 2012 to 2016, that was the time between I first stepped into Believers Church and then went to left full time for the Philippines.
So with that not a long time in general.
Yeah.
And so my question is about, did you ever feel like either you were like a fraud or like you didn't actually have any idea, well, I'm sure you probably didn't have any idea what you were doing, but like, how did you go about either handling those kind of feelings in general? Does that make sense? Or am I too confusing the question?
Like, how did I?
Did you even have any of those kind of feelings where like you felt like you didn't belong or you really didn't know what you were doing?
Oh, heck yeah, I felt like I didn't know what I was doing.
Okay. How did you go about handling those type of feelings?
How did I handle not knowing what I was doing? I asked God for a lot of help, and I asked my leaders for a lot of help. And yeah, there were times, like you asked, did I feel like a fraud? I think there were times I questioned, like, am I really saved? Is this really the call on my life? I think when you enter into that realm too, like, when you step up in service for God, Satan's coming after you. He hates that. He hates when you obey Jesus. So I think a lot of those doubts happened, and I just had to like fight through them and remember truth. remember what God said in his word and remember like what he had done in my life prior. And yeah, it was fast, like 4 years. But I don't know, maybe God took his time. Like maybe to him, a day is 1,000 years and 1,000 years is a day. So maybe in our brain 4 years seemed fast, but maybe for him he was like, finally. Rachel.
You had mentioned during your time in the Philippines, just because you weren't like physically a part of corporate church, you mentioned being lonely a lot. So how did you navigate that and like overcome those times of loneliness?
Yeah, so while I was there, we were a parachurch, so the organization we were running, we would go to different churches every Sunday as a support and to build relationships with the churches there. So yeah, I didn't have a church body that I was connected with physically there, and the whole time I was over there, I was still a member of Believers City Church. Like, that's my church, that's my sending church. And so, yeah, a lot of the community that I find, I mean, my closest friends are people in my church. So it would get lonely, very lonely over there. And I think I tried to suppress it, honestly. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you, I would try to, I would watch movies, try to get my mind off of, like, feeling lonely. Or, I remember, like in the fall, I would just go on Google Maps and look at like the aerial view of Wisconsin, and go on Google Street View and like just look at Menomonie and see if anything was different. Look at my hometown where I grew up. Like I would literally just like get what I could. I remember watching like YouTube videos about Wisconsin. Like, I would get homesick. I remember seeing a purple spoon on the ground in the Philippines, and I was like, oh, there's a Culver's. And I was like, nope, you can take the girl out of Wisconsin, but you can't take Wisconsin out of the girl. And so yeah, loneliness was real. I read books, like there's this wonderful book that Elizabeth Elliot wrote about loneliness, because obviously she experienced it. If you haven't heard her story, you should look into it. So that helped. Forming some relationships with the students in street level helped. So like pre-COVID, when we were starting to feel more like a community, that was helping with that loneliness aspect. But ultimately, I think being a Christian can be quite lonely, and that's just the way it is. Jesus was lonely. Gosh, imagine how lonely he felt all the time on this earth. And so it's like sometimes when I actually had the right heart and mind about it, I was kind of like, well, thanks, I guess I get to be more like Jesus. Honestly, because that's all I could do. And then it just made me that much more thankful for the people that I do have tight relationships with, and the church that I do get to be a part of. Any other questions? Yeah.
You briefly touched on I don't remember the exact words that you used, but the first time you were in the Philippines, this feeling of like, I don't remember, it was like, it was something along with like a thin line with God or something. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so thin spaces. So basically where it's like you're in a space, you're in an experience, you're in a moment serving God where it's almost like his presence is tangible. Like the space between heaven and earth is like paper thin, so thin that you can nearly touch him. And I think when you start to experience those thin places, you get kind of addicted to it and you want more of them. And so you seek out those opportunities to experience God close like that. And I think that that happens here. Like, I've had those thin spaces here in the States, but I've also had them abroad and in the mission field. I think maybe because you're outside of your comfort zone more and you're kind of more aware, I think it's really easy here in the routine of America to just like forget that God is there. But you can have those thin spaces with him here too. Matthew, you look like you got something.
Yeah. I know this is kind of a general question, but what would be your biggest piece of advice to someone who was interested in serving in the way that you have?
I would say start serving where God has put you now and give yourself fully, everything, 100% to whatever and whoever he has called you to right now. Because he's going to want 100% from you there too. So if you're not giving 100% everything to him here and now, what makes you think anything would change there? So for example, like as simple as committing to a local church. I think a lot of times the fear in college is, well, if I commit myself to a church, I'm going to be locked in there and I don't want to stay here after I graduate. But why not commit yourself to that church for that time and see what God would do with you in that time? He might change your heart. He did for me. I remember telling my street level leader, yeah, I don't think I'm going to stay in Menomonie after I graduate. And she was like, are you sure that's what God wants for you? Yeah, again, I was wrong. I got to stay in Menomonie. So yeah, I guess like just wherever God has put you now, commit fully. Give everything to him right now. Because the decisions you make now lead up to those decisions later. Well, Daphne's, we'll end with Daphne's question. One last.
Just like one of like when you were meeting a ton of people and trying to like help people just become disciples of Christ, like were you ever just like, I don't even know like how to do this, and then just like brain, like how did you get over any fears that you had of like, how do I share this with people in the face of like these people possibly being like, screw you, I'm never coming back to this Bible study because you told me about Jesus. And it's like, wait, that's what I was trying to do. But like, did you ever have those moments of deep fear of just like, how are these people going to respond, and how did you eventually just kind of just say like, screw it, I'm going to do this anyways?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did I get through the fears of like sharing with people what it means to be a disciple and like them possibly rejecting it? One of the verses that I held on to was John 10:16. So right after Jesus says that he gives us abundant life, he's talking about being our good shepherd and we're his sheep. And then later on he says, and I have more sheep that are of this fold, and I need to go and find them. It's something along those lines. That's the Brittany Menor condensed version. But basically, like, there are more sheep out there and we need to get them. And so that gave me a lot of confidence in, you know what? There's a lot of sheep that Jesus wants to add to his fold, and I'm just here to help bring these other sheep in. Like, I'm just a sheep, and they could be a sheep that he wants in his fold. So there was that, but also I think there's this very stark reality you have to come to as a Christian, is that when you share the gospel with people, you're holding the door open for them to choose heaven or hell. And you have to be okay with that. Like, you can't force anyone to choose to follow Jesus, but you can present the gospel to them, and then their choice is either, yes, I want Jesus, or no, I want me. I want self, I want my life, and ultimately hell. And I think, like, I mean, even Jesus did that. He preached, he taught, and people still rejected him. But that didn't stop him from telling others the truth. Okay, I think we're about out of time now. Ben, do you have anything else?
No. Thanks for being here. You can hang out a little bit after this?
Yeah, I'll be here for a bit.
Okay, so everybody can feel free to hang out. If you have more questions for Brittany or want to talk to her personally. By the way, if you're on the Mississippi trip for street level in the spring, she was threatening to sneak into the van. I think it was yesterday, right?
Yes, it was just yesterday. So if anyone has extra like space in their backpack. Yeah. Can I pray for you guys real quick? Father, you're a big God. You're a good God. And it is just such a privilege to be here with these brothers and sisters tonight. I feel like this is just like a big family gathering, and you're just watching us and pleased with us. somehow for being here together. And so I do pray, Lord, that your presence would be made known in each of these young people's lives, that each of them would be able to sit up here maybe 10 years from now and tell their story of what you've done, whether it is the Philippines or maybe just going down to Mississippi or whatever it is, Lord. I pray that each person in this room tonight would really take a good look at their lives and ask themselves, have they surrendered to you? And if they have, what's the next step? Lord, thanks for street level. Thank you for street level Menomonie and River Falls and Superior and the Philippines. Thank you for the work Jesse and Chelsea are doing over there. I ask that you would just continue to pour out your spirit upon street level, that you would use it to make disciples that make disciples, and ultimately that we could change the world together. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Smooth jazz. Thank you.